I don't actually do any booking specifically in North America, because my experience has been different. So I thought it might be interesting to talk a little bit more generally about the market for world music. And, you know, all of us who work in the form hate the term world music. It was something that was very useful, because originally it was created because a bunch of record labels thought, we need to tell the record stores where to put this stuff. So why don't we just call it the box, world music, and then instead of having to look for folk and international and national, you know, it's all in one place. And it was a great idea and very successful. So, you know, it's always important to remember that world music isn't any one thing. Some people think of it as a genre. You know, you get proposals where an artist says, I play world music. Nobody plays world music. Everybody plays their own music. So the couple of comments I wanted to make, one was that the market is very diverse. It's not interested in any one kind of music. And so, you know, there's no one way to approach having an international career. You can do it by being a very traditional artist. You can do it by being a popular artist, an alternative artist, an electronic artist, a DJ. The market doesn't want any one thing. And it's also a very sophisticated market. The audience for this kind of music, for your music, is a very, it's an educated, sophisticated market. And then, of course, if you're playing, if you're from a culture where there are a lot of immigrants, you also have the home audience. From that, I would like to just go back to something I said the other day, which is, because of how sophisticated the market is, there's no reason to try to think about, how can my music fit in? What do I need to do? How do I need to change so I can get an international audience? The international audience is very interested in what you do at home, and not in you trying to guess what the market wants. So it's really important, and it's one of the few places really, because a lot of commercial music, you have to think a lot more about markets. But in this kind of music, you have the luxury of being able to really be true to your own art. And if this audience senses that you're trying to do something that's kind of anticipating the marketplace, it tends not to like that. So it's important to be true to your art. Very good to be smart about the commerce and the market and all the rest. It's very good to inform yourself about it. Sometimes the way you present your press kit, other things, you know, I'm not saying don't think about the market, but I'm saying don't let the market determine how you make music, but learn the market. So within that, this marketplace, the world music market, has a lot of old favorites, music that it's always interested in. And amazingly, you know, there are places in Africa that decade after decade are coming up with great music. And there are, you know, and Cuban music has done such a great job of being well known, and Brazilian music. But at the same time, it has a hunger for new things. That people are really interested in being surprised and hearing something they never heard before. In Central America, you are really in a perfect position, because you know the music you have, but we don't, for the most part. So here you have fully developed music traditions in your countries. You have artists who have really thought a lot about how to present themselves. You have so many styles within each country. What a perfect situation you're in, because you're ready, the artists are there, and so now it's just a matter of trying to very, you know, carefully, smartly find the places to break through. That's a great position to be in. And because you're playing in styles that are already popular in different forms, you know, there's already an interest in different kinds of Latin music. You know, it's not as if you're going to be introducing to these new audiences a music that is very foreign to them. What it is it's familiar, but it's unique because it comes from your tradition. So, you know, this is a brilliant opportunity. The important thing also is to, all of this about, everything Leigh Ann said and has been said before, I agree with absolutely. But the idea of the right partnerships and finding people to work with and learning more about the marketplaces, because geographically it's such big territories, whether it's North America, Europe, anywhere else. And you really need people on the ground who know, which are the clubs, which are the venues, which are the programmers interested in this specific music. So, the money that you need to give to an agent, the percentage is money that's very well spent. The other reason to have an agent also is because programmers really need to be sure that if they book you, you will come. Because sometimes if you're trying to do it yourself, even with the best will in the world, it can get complicated and you might not be able to do the tour, and sometimes the cancellation could be late. So, by working with known agents and working with known labels or managers, the venues then know, okay, these people put together a show, it's less risk. In terms of the types of music, it's also very important to research a lot, and you can do everything so easily now online. The kind of music you're playing, what is the best markets for it? Because obviously if you're doing an alternative rock music, you're not going to apply for Global Fest, but you will want to apply for South by Southwest. So you need to educate yourself about the markets before you go in. That said, these music markets, the reason we talk about them a lot is because it does make things so much easier. First of all, there's so much music around that it is helpful when there's kind of a selection process. They call it a gatekeeper. Somebody at the gate who says, you come in and you don't. Because when you go to these events, you know that there has been a selection and what you're going to see is going to be the best of what's around. And the music markets are just, they're expensive because none of the music markets can afford to pay your airfare and pay your hotel, so it's an investment on your part. But it is going to be an opportunity to play in front of more potential employers than you ever will anywhere else. So it's really, it's a very great development for an artist that these music market events exist. In terms of, which ones, it depends on your music. South by Southwest can be a great way to launch a career. But South by Southwest, on the official program, has 1,500 artists. And then unofficial, it's at least 1,000 more. Yeah. So if you're playing in an environment where you're competing for time against 2,500, 2,200 other artists, very easy to get lost. So if you know how to use it, it could be really good. But if you go and spend all this money and effort and time and you haven't figured out the best way, you could lose a lot of money without result. So in terms of world music, there are a few nights that are kind of programmed by different people. There's a WOMEX night, there's a, what are the other ones?
Marco used to do the All Music is World Music.
Yeah, Marco did one there, which was in a really nice venue.
It was really great.
And now there's a new one. I didn't go this past year.
Global Fest
has one.
Nat Geo did one this year.
National Geographic. So, it's very important to get on one of these, because then the programmers interested in that music know, okay, it's 5 groups, but...
Otherwise you just get consumers.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just get a public, and you've spent a lot of money to play for free for somebody who's going to go home and say, what was the name of that group? So a really good example is the Garifuna phenomenon. Garifuna, and of course we have 2 different groups here in these days, but who in the world had ever heard of Garifuna music before Andy Palacio broke through? And He broke through because of the force of his art and his personality, but they also, people, punta rock, the form that Andy was doing before, which was more of a pop music, electric music, much more westernized. And Andy Palacio did a showcase in Womex many years ago with punta rock. And the audience really wasn't interested, because it was a very kind of internationalized pop. But then he and Ivan went back and rethought everything, and they went deeper into their roots. And it's almost ironic that the deeper you go into something that's particular, the more universal it became. By not trying to do the big pop concept, but instead going deep into their culture and to bring the music back to the drum and then build from the drum back up, they created something because of how great that idea was and because of the force of that artist, which had impact all over the world. But as we can now see, Andy Palacio wasn't the only artist who could get through. Once he opened the door, then came the Umalali project, the women. Then came the Garufuna Collective project, or actually then came Aurelio Martinez, and now the Garufuna Collective. So it's a perfect example of how it's not really about money and the expense and the huge coordination. It's about a certain integrity, and it's about the generosity in the Garufuna community, where one artist going through didn't try to keep the market for himself. He really opened it for his colleagues, his friends, and the Garufuna in Honduras and Nicaragua. So, it was a combination of many things, but it's a perfect example of how unexpected, it might be that suddenly there's a career and there's a presence. Do you know the group Chokib Town from Colombia? Chokib Town. So a lot of their music is based in hip-hop, but of course with very strong Colombian elements. So, and they are very successful because they're great. But, so it's not a matter of having to do something 100% from your culture without other influences, but it's about, I think they succeed because they're so good, but also because it is a Colombian hip-hop. It's not a North American hip-hop. So we don't want to give the impression that you have to be conservative about the music you're creating. It's just that, what I think we all look for is music that at least has the local accent from where you are from, even if it mixes in other things.